strikes me as heavy 1960s psychedelic music.
That works for me.
Right. I wasn't sure where you were coming from with it, and I just had to, put my cards on the table. That was the first impression I got. It sounded like a heavier interpretation of late 60s psychedelia, and very well done, I should add.
Well, that's very kind of you, and that's probably not far off. It wasn't exactly what I was aiming at, but it must have been where I landed.
Well, tell me, what were you aiming at?
Actually, I was. It's weird because that one was going one direction musically and a different direction lyrically, and I finally found something that kind of fit together. So by that point, I was just happy to have it sounding coherent.
Well, I can understand that, but yeah, it definitely worked out, as oftentimes those accidental pairings will. It is a marriage of styles and sounds, and you got them put together very well. John Bon Jovial, what say you?
Well, yeah, I wanted to touch on the 60s thing there for just a second because that's what I was thinking. But first and foremost, Rick, welcome back to the show. It really is nice to have you back on again with us. But I'm listening to Dancing in the Sun, and before, I never get to listen to the music before we play it on the air like this, and that's by design. And my first initial impression of it, before Dave even mentioned the 60s psychedelia, was the guitar work in there kind of reminded me of an obscure 60s power trio band called Blue Cheer. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
Yeah.
But the guitar work in there, that was the first, I had to listen. And it's like, okay, what is this? I can't put my finger on it. And then it came to me. And I consider that to be a high compliment because, these guys were really good. And I can remember back in Boston growing up, seeing them, I think it was 1966 or 67. And a bunch of my friends and I, we went to see it. And, of course, we had a psychedelic gleam in our eye at all times back then. And, Lordy. I don't need to elaborate, do I?
No.
But well done. Seriously, well done. I love that sound. I've always been preferential to it. It's what you grow up with, and that was the kind of stuff that I just fell in love with. And so you've really done a nice job with that song.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I guess I was kind of trying to fuse jazz and hard rock. Sort of, and it seems to have landed at that place. You guys got the same impression on it. Heck, if I'd have known that, if I'd have talked to you guys before I started sending this thing out, I would have had a little bit more of a promo package to say, hey, think of 60 psychedelic when you listen.
There you go. Well, you remember us in the future. We'll be glad to make comments on any future music that you have coming up. It's been a while, Rick, since you.
I said very kind of you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Absolutely, no problem. It's been a while since you were on the show last, Rick, and we've been through a heck of a lot since then, including most notably the COVID situation. What have you been doing since you were on the show the last time, especially since you were kind of locked out of performing this last year?
Well, that's a great question. Again, I want to thank you guys for having us back on the show, and very honored to be in the mix with you guys as always. As far as what's been going on, it's sadly ironic. I've been playing for quite a few years, and this band's been together for probably almost 6 years now. We had the most shows we've ever had booked in my life in 2020, and we only were able to play one show.
Oh, man.
So it was, thankfully, we've all got day jobs, I guess you say. Now, for once a musician has, I can actually say I was glad I had a day job because being in Nashville, I saw a lot of folks struggling big time.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
We focused on the recording and just continuing to tighten the live show. It's hopefully this is getting behind us and more. So we've already done several shows this year and getting ready to put some more on the books. So things are starting to look a little better again, and so we've got a couple of singles that we just released. I think you've got both of them. And we'll have a couple more before the end of the year.
Well, great. Yes, we've got two of them. As a matter of fact, I think it's kind of kind of appropriate the way they worked out, and this wasn't intentional. We've got Dancing in the Sun that we just opened with, and of course, if you're dancing too close to the sun, you're going to set your wings on fire. So the next song is going to be Wings of Fire. So I think that's a rather appropriate progression there. And speaking of progressing, John Bon Jovi is progressing to where he wants to get back on in here. Come on, John, what you got?
Yeah, I want to ask you, Rick, about COVID activities. Did you guys do any kind of online performances, whether you want to call it a Zoom concert or a virtual concert, so you could keep your keep yourselves from getting rusty, so to speak?
Well, we were invited to several of them, and our bass player also works at a club downtown in Nashville where she was doing that for that club so that they could stay afloat. And they turned it into a pretty good subscription thing. We never ended up doing one because as the technological discussion kept going around, it was we were going to have to invest some money in cameras and things of that nature that, unless we could rent time at a certain place. And it kind of fell through. And we were actually able to do, we didn't, our churches reopened here probably in June last year. So my wife and I did some of that, work just on at church. So that kept us rusty. And we kept rehearsing. We made sure we got a rehearsal in about once every month or so that we weren't getting too rusty. But great question.
Yeah, you ask sort of a follow-up, I guess. You just mentioned the church thing. Are you guys, do you also do any kind of gospel music?
Well, my wife and I have been on our, what they call the praise team for, 15 years or so at our church. So we've got a catalog of that. For the formation of this current band, my brother and I were doing an indie Christian rock band. So we had worked with a nice producer that had out of the UK that had produced people like Roger Daltrey, Jeff Beck, Meatloaf. So we had a couple albums with him. This new formation, we decided not to go so in your face with it and just make our lyrics positive and biblically based, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Very interesting.
The only reason why I ask is that when that was brought up, I flashed back on my days in the early 70s up in Tampa, Florida, and a friend of mine and I, who as it turned out, he was the best man at our wedding. But he and I used to go up into Pasco County and check out on the weekends, check out the tent revivals. And some of the most outrageous music. It was so good. And yeah. I've often thought that if that was marketed properly, it would be more than just the Baptists or the evangelicals that would get into it because, musically, it was just, I don't know how to describe it other than just amazing. Just awesome stuff. Right straight from the gut.
Yeah. Well, my brother and I were doing, it was a hard rock Christian thing, and he was Catholic and I'm just non-denominational, so we were doing, all phases of Christendom, so to speak. Now we'll do a little bit of ministry stuff. We do a Nashville Rescue Mission in town. We'll play some of our songs, and then every now and then we'll throw in, something that's definitely an old Christian hymn or something like that, just to have a taste of that in there. So it's wide open. We kind of run it as we see fit.
That brings up a subject that I wanted to touch upon with you, and that is the fact that, okay, you came from a hard rock Christian band, and you went into what you call now the Reverent Cavaliers and your music. And of course, most everyone thinks of Nashville, they think of country music. And I know from my own experience, having been there, there is a lot more going on in Nashville than just country music. But tell us, as a person who's involved in that, the other part of Music City, what is the market like as far as non-country or rock music?
It's vibrant. It's not huge, but it's definitely vibrant. We're watching a lot of the acts. I think there's three rock channels here in town. It kind of rivals the amount of country channels we've got. Yeah, we've got one just south of us in Columbia, Tennessee, which is about 45 minutes out of Nashville. They're pretty much a rock channel as well. So it again, obviously country is going to be the breadwinner here, but it's funny because I'm not a huge country fan. My wife likes country, but my nephew plays drums for us, and my wife sings, harmony with me. So it's funny he and I are both definitely rockers.
Right.
It's almost like fish out of water here.
I hear you. Let me ask you this now. Another thing that most people think of when they think of country music in Nashville, they think about, of course, making it to the heart of country music, going to Nashville, becoming a star, and so on. How is the market to break into if, for example, I had what I considered a good, solid rock band, and I wanted to come to Nashville to play the rock scene in Nashville?
It's doable. The problem that I'm seeing, and maybe you guys, it sounds like you've got quite a history yourselves. The problem that I'm seeing now is the labels were not ready for the digital realm. So now you've got this massive divide with Spotify and Apple Music and all, just basically paying artists peanuts. Like,
right.
I think I looked at something at one point, we had like 10,000 spins and it earned us 0.007 cents.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that that situation and the fact that you can't make money off the music per se. And it seems like this is something that has been coming on more and more over the years, and the internet has just exacerbated the position. But it's good to know that the market is open to two new artists to come in, even if they're not country, and that there is a place for them, and that they can put that on their wish list of cities that they would like to play in to get their music out. And of course, that's what it's all about anymore. You got to get out, you got to do the shows and the live shows in order to make any real money. And there are so many in the music industry now that so many artists that do have to have day jobs, and I can relate because I've been in that position myself where you've got your love and you've got your day job, and you hope that the day job lasts so that when the love of your other career, as it were, has a gap, you've got a way to keep putting bread on the table, and that's a big thing. Now, real quickly before we let you go, want to thank you once again for coming and being with us today, and always great to hear from you. Great that you shared your music with us. Tell us, if you would, please, about this next track we're going to play, Rings of Fire.
This one was amusing in the sense that I wrote about 6 different sets of lyrics for it, and my wife is my trusted critique, and she shot all of them down. And I finally got around to this set of lyrics, and she's like, "Now this will kind of work, I think." And I'm like, "All right, because you're going to be the call on the chorus, and I'm answering you instead of usually I write as whereas the male vocal is usually the main vocal on the choruses. I'm
right.
Like, you're gonna, and so she was fine with it. But yeah, it's just basically about a person who feels like they've hit rock bottom, but you're not there. You're going to regain your fire, so to speak, and you're going to rise again. Basically on that scripture that says, "A smoking flax he will not quench," meaning God's not got whatever you got burning, God's going to use it and get you going again.
Amen. I hear you. And our salute to you, your wife, and all the group in the band. And thank you so wholeheartedly. Don't forget to keep in touch with us. Use my Facebook groups page to post up new music, gigs, whatever you got that you want to share with your fans and followers. We'll make sure it gets spread to our other social media. Be sure and give our best to your missus and everybody else. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Hammond of Reverent Cavaliers, and here they are with Wings of Fire.